All right, we are live, Julia.
Good morning, Michael. How are
Yeah,
you?
good morning. Minus, I'm good. We're minus music and our card to introduce our guest here.
Yes, but I think we can. I think we can handle it. Our fearless leader is uh, is out for the day, so Michael and I are going to talk to Dayna Mooney, who is the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty in Canadian County, and she is a crazy good researcher and um, fearless fighter for the kids in Canadian County for sure. And anyway, I love to talk to Dayna, and I can't wait to get her on. So let's bring Dayna on.
Yeah. All right.
Morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Good to see your face. So I hear Moms for Liberty is about to have their national meeting. Tell us about that and who all's going and
Well, they're having their national summit that they have every year. This year's in Philadelphia, and they've got various speakers from Donald Trump to Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm sure I completely butchered that last name, but there's a whole lineup of people that'll be there doing speaking engagements. They'll have breakout sessions where chapter chairs and members from Moms for Liberty from all over the country can gather to network and just kind of get recharged, I guess, for this fight that we're all in. State Superintendent Ryan Walters will also be there with a couple other educational professionals that they will be on a panel together, having a discussion in one of the sessions. So it's a fun-filled, I say fun-filled, but it's a very busy 4 or 5 days if you're a chapter chair, 5 days. But it's also just a very busy, fast-paced event where you just take in a lot of information. So, and being around a bunch of like-minded people, which is always nice.
Right. So tell us about tell us about some of the things y'all have been hearing about protests going. First of all, tell us what Moms for Liberty really does. I mean, you are actually parents. It's not just moms, but
Sure.
Parents advocating for your own children. Isn't that correct?
Yes. So Moms for Liberty is composed of moms, grandparents, family members of these children, of and just concerned people who don't like the direction that our education system is going, things that they see being taught in the schools. So, but Moms for Liberty, where we come in, is we help parents learn how to advocate for their children, and showing them the things that are going on in the schools. And or if they see something, then a lot of times they'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And is there a way to get it out? And so then we go through that with them and how to do that, as well as showing them other things that may be coming in down the pipeline, this grant, or this is what this is going to provide, or however that may fall. But basically we just work to empower parents to advocate on behalf of their children. Scary thing, I know. But we're not book banners. It's not about book banning. I know that's a big thing that's been going around, and it's more about the age appropriateness of books that are within our child's reach.
Right. That's such a huge thing. But even back, I mean, we fought this in Common Core. Congressman Josh Brakeen, who at the time was State Senator Josh Brakeen, read in 2014 as part of our Common Core repeal bill, read from the bluest eye on the Senate floor and was gavelled out because you can't talk like that on the Senate floor. Yes.
Imagine that.
And they're, the fact that this went forward, that this, kind of stuff went forward after that is pretty mind-boggling.
Well, that sort of thing is happening all across the country within moms or grandparents, pastors, people getting up in front of school boards who are reading those books with similar nature in
Right.
front of school boards, and then being, kicked out, pulled out, arrested, for reading that information from the books. And
Right.
it is disgusting, but that's the point. It's so disgusting that you don't want it read out in a public forum, but it's okay to be in front of our children. Help me
Exactly.
make that make sense.
That's
What-
depraved. That's
on-
just depraved.
Well, on that note with the books, Dayna, what's been your experience with your school district, your board members? And because like for me, every time that because we have a large parent group here in Edmond that has opposed those for many years, and they just literally say, hey, there's nothing wrong with it. We're just trying to be open to everybody. And even in our opt-out class that we finally got put into place here, the book list is still basically the same minus one book. But what's your experience there also?
Well, as far as the suggested, reading list that they give to the kids, usually in high school, I haven't seen it too much in middle school here anyway, but they give them an alternative list. So if the parent comes in and says they don't want them reading, for instance, 1984 or Fahrenheit 451, then they have an alternative list that the children can choose from, or the parent can choose from, for their child to read for that, particular unit. But they don't remove them, but it also depends on, especially in 1984, how are they teaching that to them? What is the lens that's being taught through?
Right.
And when you ask them that, of course, they look at you like, what lens do you mean? And then you have to explain to them, well, is it
This is good, or are you teaching them this is bad?
because in some of those books, those things are happening now, in a maybe not completely to that degree, but it is happening, to some form or fashion. But they don't teach it like it's happening now. They teach it just like this could be happening, or this is just the assigned reading for the time. And they play different games, for like 1984, for example, they played a game about where you have to tell on your classmates if they don't do certain commands during the day, like if you don't say hello comrade when you go into a classroom, or if you don't speak to a certain way to a teacher, then these certain people can basically tell on you at the end of the day, and then you get points knocked off. It's like,
wow.
It was interesting when my son was explaining it to me, but I said, well, do you understand why that is, like how that happens, and but they weren't teaching it like real time, like it was happening in real time, that this is what could happen, So, but as far as, libraries and things out here, I mean, I will say that the school libraries themselves have been pretty clean as far as the pornography is concerned. What they have out here is the gender identity books, and those go all the way down to pre-K. But as far as the pornography, it was pretty clean. We've had a couple complaints from parents who said that there were some in classroom libraries out here. But as parents, we can't have access to parent libraries. We barely get in the door.
So those parents that have seen those books in the classroom, can they, would they be able to maybe come forward and testify? And I mean, those teachers need to be removed. And
well, I'm working on it in one situation. The other one, they absolutely weren't interested in that. So I'm hoping that at least for one of them, we can get someone to come forward.
Good.
So.
I know it. You have to be courageous, but you've got the good on your side.
Mm-hmm.
And people are, and why don't other teachers come forward? I know why, but
sure.
if I was in a school, if I was a mom in this school, those books would not be in there. I promise you, because they would know that I would be coming for them.
Well, I think some teachers, like you already know, they're just afraid to speak up and say
Yeah.
anything because they get bullied. They get, threatened with their job, or they just downright get fired, without any explanation.
Which is
But
insane.
it absolutely is. But we have teachers who do report things to us, as well as other members, who report things to us because they're afraid to bring it forward. And I'm like, it's not, parents want to know. Parents want to know what's being taught to their children. Is it appropriate for that particular class? And it's up to the parent, whether or not they actually want to do anything. Now, I mean, we can ask about it. We can go to school board meetings and, bring it up, but there has to be more of us saying this is enough. And people are scared. And believe me, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I have
Well,
kids in public school, so I get it. But
well, I know kind of from my experience, the biggest thing I would hear from other parents, because I was labeled a book burner and a banner and all that, it was ridiculous, actually. But the other parents I would talk to, they themselves weren't necessarily afraid. They were so worried about the retribution or the retaliation against their kids at class, whether it's from a teacher or maybe getting bullied by other kids or just being singled out in one way or another. But, like I agree, Dayna, if we had 100, 200, 500 parents up there at the school saying, this is not the proper way to handle this situation, that would, move the needle pretty quickly in any district.
Sure.
Yeah. Would you believe I ran into a friend who is 2 years away from retirement, and she made the comment to me. She said, I can't believe parents still bring their kids to public schools. That's how bad it is. And I thought, whoa. And, there she is 2 years away from retirement and just witnessing all these things going on. And, she's a Christian, and it's just, you can't be okay with it.
Well, I think the other thing is that for some reason people think that we're against teachers. That's another thing that we get. And it's actually quite the opposite. We want to support teachers. I have teachers in my family. I mean, we all know a teacher, and we've all had great teachers over the years, but never are we against the teachers. We want to figure out how to help them. Those who have trouble or are afraid to just speak out. For some, it's their only income. So they don't have the luxury of just being able to, speak up, I guess, in that aspect. But we very much want to help them. We talk to teachers in our group, and we ask them, how can we help you guys? What can we do to help you? And all I ever get from them in response is just pray for us.
Right.
And which we absolutely do that, because they're in a war and on their own. I know it's a strong word, but it really is what it is. So there's some great teachers out there, and my kids are coming home almost daily and telling me what kids are doing to teachers and what they get away with. And they just, when it's to the point that my daughter comes to me and says, can you please homeschool me? Mom, it's time. That there's things going on there that they're not telling me. And they do tell me quite a bit about what happens during the day. But I also ask questions, a lot of questions.
Right.
In order for them to talk to me about what's going on and what they're doing at school. And when you bring it up to principals, it's just, well, that's a private matter. They can't discuss that. So, there's other reasons why teachers are leaving the profession versus what you hear on mainstream media.
It's not about money. And if it was about money, they could do like Texas and gut the administration budget by 75%, because that's what Texas has, and put that money in the classroom. But that's just a whole nother subject.
Right. So teachers just don't feel real supported in a lot of a lot of ways. And unfortunately, a lot of them won't come forward either. And unless they've already retired or, they were fired or whatever the case was. But, and, just for the slap in the face, if you will, when the kids go to the principal's office to get in trouble, they come back in 5 minutes or less, and they go right back to the same class they were just taken out of to continue the same behavior.
Right.
So I think that's something that's real important that we're trying to brainstorm on, is trying to figure out how we can help teachers, and, finding some common ground with those that don't necessarily agree with us or that think they don't like us for whatever reason.
Right.
And just try to build on that. And until everybody's willing to do that, then there will be, I guess we'll still be at odds with people. But
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. So.
And so both of y'all, because your kids are in, have been busy doing like FOIA requests and things like that. So tell us about those. That's a huge topic, and a lot of people aren't aware that they can get information. I mean, public schools is public, so that information is not supposed to be secret. But Dayna, didn't they want to charge you $1,000 or something like that the last time you wanted information?
Yeah. I'd requested information on family engagement, just the topic family engagement, but I requested emails, and I requested how many people have been brought on, as far as staff wise under that, that section or that topic, because I initially tried under DEI, or I even listed it out for them, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they came back and said, oh, we don't have anybody under that. We didn't do anything under that. I thought, okay. So I went back and I thought, well, let's try again. So when I went back with that, they came back with, well, it's going to take, X number of hours. I think you said 25 hours, and it'll be approximately $1,000. And because this is the second time they tried to charge me for something. So, but this time I was like, $1,000, that must be some, usually it's a deterrent,
Must be a lot. Must be
right.
a lot of information there.
I know. So
and there they have all those administrators.
That's some gold-plated paper or something. I don't know. But so anyway, I responded back and just had told him, that this was for public interest, and that according to state law, they couldn't charge me. And that was a week ago. I haven't heard back. So
yeah, they hate it when the state law is around.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they do in all these school districts.
Mm-hmm.
And Dayna and I've talked multiple times about this. They put in an actual school board policy or some type of district procedure or policy in order to try to enforce parents to follow their rules.
Right.
Where the state law is really clear as to how you get records, what you can ask for, what the charges are going to be. And if it is truly in the public's interest, then they just have to provide that information to you. They can't charge you that. And you just have to continue to push back against them and say, I'm following the law. What are you doing? Are you following the law? Because it seems like you're making your own little protocol here to release records. And as long as you just keep pushing back against them, ultimately you're in the right and they're in the wrong, and they have to provide the records. They're a public institution, just like any other institution. But I'll just tell you, in my experience, I've done at this point thousands of open records. The only people that ever try to charge these research fees and all this exorbitant everything are school districts.
Mm-hmm.
City government never does it. State institutions don't do it. Federal institutions don't do it. If you ask for the data, they'll send it to you. It's usually redacted in some way, but for the most part, they don't go around in all these circles, these cat and mouse games, trying to charge you and deter you. So you just have to continue to go through. So I hope, just Dayna sending that response back into them now that it's been a week. I mean, they're really trying to figure out how to get around this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm proud of Dayna for always just pushing that envelope. And if we just had more parents like that, we would be able to really make a nice change in these school districts and make them accountable, because they're just not used to telling us what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you'll have to keep us posted, Dayna, on how that goes. But
Yes.
but have you? What are some of the success stories with getting information?
Well, I think this, success stories are just, it's for us to find out what's being taught to our children, so that we can share with parents, because I know I've been up to the school a couple times to review curriculum, because that's another part is they don't let you have copies. They don't let you take it. You have to sign a form, at least in one of our districts, that says you can't record it. You can't take pictures. You can't, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, I am a taxpayer. I have paid for all this. Like, why can I not have a copy? And then, but they also apply that copyright thing to Google Forms, Google Docs.
That's so dumb.
And I'm like, you can't do that. Like, that's not how that works. Well, or you could sit there and copy it verbatim. That's what you can do, since you can't make a picture. You can't take a picture or a video or anything. But, and I've done that a couple times on a couple different things, but not every parent has the time to go up there and sit during the day, because they give you the times, right? You have to go with whatever works best for them, because it's not about accommodating you, the parents. So, but I've been up there. I've had nice conversations each time I've been up there. Is it going to change anything? I don't know. But explaining to them that, parents just want transparency. Yeah, I can go to your website and see what textbooks you're using for each grade and each class, but that doesn't tell parents what you're actually teaching in that class. What's the work being given? What is the lectures, that our teachers are giving? We talked about, there was a banned book assignment in a senior literature class, and it was only on banned books. There was no conversation about banned books versus age-appropriate books. So when these kids go out into the world, all they've ever been taught about is banned books. And if someone doesn't like a book, then they're a book banner. Like we've all experienced being called that. And so I said, this is part of the problem, is when these kids are going out, they're being taught that it's a horrible thing if someone questions a book. I'm sorry, I don't want my kindergartner seeing the book genderqueer. I just don't want that to be a thing, right?
Oh, disgusting.
So it's a horrible, horrible book, as far as for young children to read. Now, if an adult wants their high schooler to read it, more power to them. But parents should have a say-so in that.
I don't even want to read that book.
Absolutely not.
It's polluting your brain. There's no reason for it.
So we had that conversation about trying to share both sides of something, so that kids are actually really informed of both sides of the coin, not just what a teacher's perspective is on one side of the coin. Because when I was a kid, we never knew a teacher's political affiliation or how they stood on certain subjects, or, we were always taught both sides of things. And, now kids can't even have like a real debate tournament, so it's like they can't really do anything that causes debate.
Right.
Or even a discussion. Just a simple civilized discussion is not something that is allowed, really. So if you're showing someone both sides of the coin, that means you're bad, really, because they're not doing that in school. They're not showing both sides, so that children can decide for themselves, yes, I want to be, or I align more with Republican values or Democrat values or independent, libertarian, whatever it is, then that should be for the child to decide, not because they were pushed that direction, right?
Right.
So when you've got these kids going into college and then they're out protesting and, all that stuff, it's because of misinformation or just not being given all information.
The information, right.
So to make an informed decision, they're making a decision based off of the one side of a subject that they were taught. So,
and this is one of the things, if I was a teacher or an administrator in public schools and a parent wanted to know what was happening in their kid's classroom,
Mm-hmm.
I would never dream of saying, no, you can't have that. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I wouldn't do, I wouldn't let a Sunday school teacher do that to me, much
Well,
less.
there's teachers, when a parent requests information from a teacher, like they start asking questions, they will automatically forward them to the principal.
Yeah.
So they don't want to answer, they don't feel comfortable, they don't want to answer, whatever the reason is, they now forward them off to somebody else. And not every teacher does that. There's still some good teachers. I still have conversations with teachers, what are my kids doing? I had a question about, my son came home and said they did a rainbow project. He's in 7th grade. Why are we doing rainbow projects? Well, I went and asked some information, and it was on a math assignment that there were pictures of rainbows on the assignment, which was a whole other thing. But why, But why did he come home and say it was a rainbow project?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you know what's scary for me, Dayna, the biggest factor is we're here in red, very conservative, probably overwhelmingly Christian Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
you're
church
in
on
these
every
small
corner.
school districts, and this is happening, in these Christian conservative school districts. Imagine outside of the Oklahoma red bubble. I mean, I just can't even imagine what some of these other parents and teachers, and to dovetail on kind of something we just barely touched on earlier. I spoke to a lot of teachers, and they told me that they actually miss parents being in the classroom because
Mm-hmm.
kids behave better when there was
Right.
that extra adult in the classroom watching or listening or helping, or it tamed them down even more. So there's a lot of teachers that are upset to that fact, but like you said, they're non-confrontational, and they don't want to put themselves, in that firing line position.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of it's like a catch-22. But I think as the more they remove us, then that's how they were able to bring in these books and bring in, there's no discipline, and the drugs are out of control and everything else in the schools.
But I think if you go back and you look at why is the behavior changed? What was it that caused the behavior to change? Why is it now that all these things are in school that weren't always in school? And a lot of it goes back to money that they've gotten from the federal government.
Yeah.
It says that they have to do these things, right? And and that's kind of where I think it all starts at. I mean, I'm not saying no federal funding before anybody starts attacking, but I mean that's a big thing right now.
And that's basically, well, I would say no federal funding, because for one thing, $32 trillion in debt. I'm sorry, that is enslaving our children, future generations. That's enslavement. And so, yeah, I am against any federal dollars being spent on anything. I think shut the place down and let's let states do their own thing for a while and see how that goes. Because
if you get all the federal money out, then, but also the other thing is the outside of Oklahoma groups, like those national groups, right, is another problem. And so I think it all kind of just sort of feeds into these problems that we're seeing. The other day I was watching something about ESSER money, that the schools had received. There was ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And the first 2 they got didn't have any strings attached to it, other than your annual reporting that they already have to do, right? But then they get ESSER 3 comes in, and they get 2/3 of it. But then the last third, they put a provision in right before they put it out and said, you have to agree to all these things before you get the last third. Well, included in that third was where the implementation of social emotional learning came into the schools, your contract tracing, your health clinics at the schools, your segregation of students because of their jab status or, whatever the case was. Your mental health professionals that they brought in by the truckloads, it seems.
Yes.
All these admin people that they were bringing in stem from this portion of ESSER money. And if schools really knew how much ESSER money they had got,
yeah,
there's no way that they could still be crying wolf about not having money, because, well, they'd be like, where's all that money going?
exactly. It's going to pollute our kids' minds is where it's going.
I mean, there are teachers who barely make a livable wage. There's teachers' assistants. I mean, I've known several teachers' assistants who barely make $11 an hour.
Wow.
That have 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, just to make ends meet. That's not fair. I just don't think that that's right. While admins with their 6 figures in some cases.
Well, superintendent's making $500,000 almost.
So I just think it's a little like maybe just off of, why are these people that work so hard, who truly do this because they care for the children, having to work so hard to keep doing something they love.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just feel like it's off balance, quite a bit. But when I figured out that that's actually where it all had came in at, and those strings that were attached, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is where all this money came from, and this is how much they got. And then you can go look up, how much your school received of those funds.
Right.
So, but most parents don't know that that's even an option. So, but if they knew, what would they do with it? Would it help them?
And most
ask
parents
questions?
are convinced that they're not supposed to ask questions.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing thing to me. I just, I never didn't want to be where my kids were. They were in public schools, but I followed them to school because I could back
Sure.
a few years ago. And but what you were talking about, not being able to see the textbooks when my youngest was going, I was at a parent meeting, where parents meet the teachers and all of that, at this parent meeting at the middle school, and Kristen was about to go into 7th grade, and the 7th grade science teacher just walks over to me, hands me the textbook, and says, I don't teach chapter 8. Here's the book. Because my reputation had preceded me, and he knew I was going to come look at his textbook. And he just gave it to me to take home. I mean, that's communication. That's the way it should be. He knew I was going to ask, so he just brought it to me and said, we don't do chapter 8.
I don't know if all school districts do it this way, but when I was meeting with one of our districts, when they pick their textbooks, apparently at the state level, they color code them by approval. Green is good, and red is bad, and I guess yellow is somewhere in between. And maybe there was another color, I'm not sure. But as far as one of our districts, they had mentioned specifically that they only choose textbooks that have green, that were rated green. But most of these textbooks come from like McGraw-Hill, Pearson.
Oh, yeah, they bought up all the other textbook companies back when we were fighting Common Core. Yeah.
And they sell that like when it's green, it's going to be a great book. There's no issues with it. Parents should be fine with it, And sometimes that may be the case, but it's how it's being taught is the other part of that equation, right?
Right.
What lessons are they putting with it? Because some of them will pull their own information to put with it, and then whatever they're lecturing on. We've heard of recordings across the country where it's the lectures that are in violation of state laws or whatever. It's not the textbook. It's not so much the work that was associated with it. It's the lectures. But if you think about schools and their rules with no cell phones, or some teachers won't let them have them out, or whatever the case is, then it makes it harder for them to do that. So, is that a reason that they've started doing that with schools? So some schools just downright don't even let you bring them in the school. I've seen with some of the smaller districts. But they won't let you do your schoolwork on them anymore either. If you don't have a Chromebook, but everybody should have one of those.
That's a whole nother topic. The Chromebooks. I mean, they've been different places have been caught watching kids, through the Chromebook and changing information for the parent to see from what the kids are seeing.
Well, they pound in the kids. They will pound in that they have to be on Wi-Fi. They'll have them connecting to Wi-Fi, and so for my kids that have their phones, they have service, so they already have internet on them. But when they get to school, they're like, it'll work better if you connect to Wi-Fi. So everywhere we go, my kid thinks that she has to connect to Wi-Fi because that's the only way she's going to get anywhere. It's too slow, if she doesn't have Wi-Fi. But that's how they're getting in, and they track some of the things that these kids are doing.
Sure.
And whether, even though it's your device, you pay for it, whatever, as a parent, as long as they connect to that Wi-Fi, then they can get in there and see all the things. Same thing with the laptops. If they don't take out a Chromebook specifically from the school, then they can still track your child on your own personal laptop because they connect to Wi-Fi. So that's one thing I've noticed with mine, is that it's always got to figure out where the Wi-Fi. If there's no Wi-Fi, I won't be able to use my phone, And I explained to her, it is on a service. We pay for it every month, but that's what they pound in their heads to say, so they can then connect to Wi-Fi. And kids think, well, they're telling me I have to. They're the teacher, right? Because they're supposed to be respecting the teachers and doing as they're asked. Well,
Well, parents overrule teachers. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So let's shift to. I wanted to talk to both of y'all. Are so involved in school board meetings and all of that, and Dayna, you've started going not only to the school board meetings but to the city council meetings.
Yeah.
And it's all the same thing, though, isn't it? It seems like the interests of one dovetail the interests of the other, and they're all in cahoots. I know that's true in Yukon. You can't. The city only operates if the schools want them to do something, and same with their Chamber of Commerce. It's just all one big happy family. But Michael, you ran for school board, and just tell me let's talk a little bit about school board meetings and what they discuss at school board meetings these days, because I don't think it's a whole lot of reading and math.
Well, I will tell you from personal experience, when our school board members are completely disempowered. First of all, they're our first line of defense. They're our representative. They're our avenue into these schools and the accountability and transparency. But they believe, and they're trained through OSSBA and other, just through the hand-me-down kind of system and the good old boy system that is in place, that the district knows how to run the school. The district does everything. The superintendent controls the school. You're in a supportive role of the superintendent. And when you go to a board meeting, almost all these board meetings, they have a big packet that's already prepared for the board members, and they're basically just saying yes to every single item. There's very little discussion. There's no, there's no dissenting vote, and there's no real discussion about, even if someone dissents, they may just pull an item out and say, okay, we'll talk about that. But then they go behind closed doors,
right?
And they go talk about it, if they even talk about it, in executive session. But as far as school board meetings go, you go in there, you watch the charade. That's what I'll call it. Is it's just a charade. They're just going through the motions because they have to. But there's no real interaction. They limit parents' time to speak, and there's no real follow up. I mean, even as a parent, if you go speak, none of the board members really come up to you and say, "Hey, I want to learn more about that," or let's meet, or there's just no follow through. It's all just a procedure that they're just kind of trained in.
Mhm.
And city council is maybe slightly better, probably not really, but they do give you just a little bit more time at city council, and you can catch those guys or people, girls, coming, in or out of the meetings to talk to them. But for the most part, it's all a well-organized system to just exclude us, the parents, taxpayers, from the decisions and in that accountability process. I'm sure Dana's got, pretty close to the same type of experience
Mhm.
that I've seen. But I can tell you that I sat down with the superintendent, and the superintendent said, "This is how we do things. This is how it's going to work."
Yeah, that's pretty much what I, experience out here with our school board. It's very much about yes, man, yes, sir, like yes to the man all the time. Like, I don't know that I've seen them really vote against him on anything. Every once in a while, I'd like to see just one, just
Mhm.
something. But they all vote the same every time. They all look to the super before they will do anything. They will say, "Is this okay with you, superintendent?" And I'm like, "Who is running this show here?" Because obviously the superintendent is, right? But
Clearly.
and there's a couple board members who will ask questions, like if someone's doing a presentation or something, they will ask questions, and kind of give, there's one that'll kind of give a little pushback, but it's not enough, really. I mean, like you answered, great, asked a couple questions, but it's not really effective, in anything because they all do the same thing all the time. Yes, they do give parents the time to speak, but they can't respond or anything. So
Just ridiculous. Why can't you have a
Yeah.
conversation?
yeah, there's so there's no additional interaction of any kind other than you just speaking. I know I've reached out to school board members, and I've got one that will respond, but he only wants to talk on the phone. Yeah, no, because obviously he
Record.
doesn't want any record, right? So, but city council's been a little different experience for me. They follow us out, and they will ask, "Why are you here?" And because I live here. Every month that I've been, I've had a different one come ask me each time, "Why are you here? What are you doing here? These meetings are so boring. You could be anywhere else."
See, and that's why I would never run for school board. But
it's really been funny. It's like there's only, well, whether you're at a school board or city council, there's not a bunch of citizens there anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
right.
I mean, when I go to city council, there's like 3 of us, and that's because I brought them. Okay. I mean, and then why are you here? I bring a different person every time, and
Well,
so that's been my experience.
They do. Parents or people are more likely to binge watch a TV show than to go to city council and school board and those kind of things, which is, come on, people, let's get them,
Well,
priority.
I can speak to that because it's just experience that I've had through my campaign and my life and my 5 kids. Parents are so busy, and I'm not making excuses for parents, but there's so much more going on now than there was 20 or 30 years ago, especially with all the entertainment and, everybody's live on their phone all day long.
Right.
But I do think we are having somewhat of a renaissance. You have a group like a Moms for Liberty that never needed to exist before, but it is here now. And even though they're being demonized, as everything you could possibly imagine from the national media and everyone else, you have, in my opinion, you've got kind of a reformation starting to happen, and it's probably going to take some time, but at least these things are happening. You have people like Dayna that are stepping forward and running a chapter and going back to kind of what it is to be a free, sovereign, American citizen that it seems like we've been educated over the last 20, 30 years to forget that has happened, for us to be free. But I would like to know, Dayna, like how many state chapters are there of Moms for Liberty, and kind of, how would someone get a hold of you and participate or even start their own chapter, or, something like what is that process?
So there's Moms for Liberty chapters across 45 states, I believe now. And basically starting a chapter is a fairly easy process. You just, you can go to momsforliberty.org and click on find a chapter or start a chapter. Find a chapter to see if there's one in your area, but to start one that's just in the same area, you click there and then it goes through the process of how to start one. Or you can also reach out to me at moms for the number 4 Liberty Canadian County at gmail.com. And I'm happy to help you get one started, answer any questions for you, and what all it entails if you're interested in starting one. But it's Moms for Liberty has been in existence now for about a little over 2 years and has grown. My chapter is almost a year old, so, and has grown exponentially since I've started. So it's definitely something that's moving rapidly across the United States. Parents are finding out what's happening in their schools, what's being done to their kids. Not so much in Oklahoma we have it, but in other states where they're being, they're being groomed in Oklahoma too, but many are to the point where in some states where they'll take them to do it for you and not even let the parent know until after the fact. There's states that are working to take away parent rights. So those are things that we have to follow, because unfortunately those things will likely make it to Oklahoma in some form or fashion, whether it's a state level or federal level. So
there was one thing we were talking about, I think yesterday, and about the federal government trying to remove parent consent. Tell us about that.
So if you have a child that's on an IEP or a 504, the policies for that are under IDEA, and the Secretary of Education is proposing removing all portions that require parent consent. And parents have until August 1st to comment on this proposal, to basically then they could do whatever they want to your child at school without having to inform you of anything. No parent permission, no parent signatures, no anything. They could diagnose your kid with whatever they would like, that they feel deemed as necessary, and there's nothing you can do about it while they're at school.
And they are in the process of the whole school, what's it called? Whole school stuff.
Whole community, whole school, whole child movement.
Yeah. And bringing doctors and like you said, the influx of counselors into schools. And California just passed a law that said the counselors can take your baby away from you if they deem necessary.
If they want their care, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's happening in multiple ways. In Oklahoma, they call it a couple different things. They don't necessarily call it whole community, whole school, whole child type thing. They will call it multi-tiered systems of support. They will call it positive behavioral intervention services.
Oh, good. Thank you for your service.
Yeah. But their positive behavior is what's contributing to the behavior issues that we see in the classroom, because everything to them is trying to figure out how to spin it into a positive versus actually disciplining them. So that's why you're seeing a lot of those behavior issues in addition to other things, but that's certainly part of it. The goal is for them to find ways to get majority of children on an IEP or a 504, because then it falls under these other rules. And then if your child happens to be on Medicaid, well, that's a whole other thing, because some school districts are bringing in providers who only treat special needs children that are on Medicaid, because then they have free reign. They can charge Medicaid. They bill them like they were at the doctor's office, because they brought in, physicians or nurses. If there's no physicians on site, then they'll just pull them up via telehealth and just see them there. And they sell it to parents like it's so convenient, it's the best thing. You don't have to be here, you don't have to take off work, just give us permission, you know. But if this passes, if they remove the parent consent portions of this, then there will no longer be a need for parent consent. They can diagnose them as such, have them be seen by whoever, and you may or may not ever know about it. So,
Wow.
But now the IDEA is just specifically for 504s and IEPs. It don't matter what your insurance is. That's another level of it, you know, that they put in there. So, but if they remove parent consent, then what do we have? You know, because everybody believes that the federal government usurps, you know, states. So our parent Bill of Rights here in Oklahoma would be worthless.
Right.
So, I mean,
yeah,
I hate to say that, but that's just
well, and that's probably
reality.
just that much more in federal dollars coming
Right.
into the school on top of the school lunch program and all the other programs that they have.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and in the cafeterias, there's grants that are getting from USDA, maybe others, but I know specifically a USDA grant.
They'll be feeding lab-produced meat to our children. I guarantee it.
Yes, that's probably coming. But they've teamed up with, you know, state Medicaids to where, you know, Medicaids will give their roles to the schools for lunch programs. And whether or not that takes away, you know, you have to fill out that form for free or reduced lunches. I don't know about that part yet, but I know that that's coming. I sat in on a meeting where they were talking about this grant and what they were getting from it. So they're going to get a roll of children who receive Medicaid services, who are on food stamps, you know, at these schools that they've never had before. So, but they're all integrating. Part of that whole community, whole school, whole child model is that they're all interjecting together. They're all coming together, and they'll say for the benefit of your child, but it's, well, they've said it themselves. They believe that they're their children, not our children, right? So
like
I've already prepared mine, you know, that's on an IEP. I told them, if this passes, mom has to pull you, you know, because if they're not going to listen to your mom, then there's no need for you to be there.
Right.
Because I'm the one who takes care of you. I'm your mother. And I have to say so. You know, so he doesn't like it. I certainly don't want to do it, but, you know, I have to protect my kids. So, but they have till August 1st to put their comments in. I can post that information where people will go to make their comments. I don't know how soon after that, if they decide to continue and remove those, how soon it would take effect. So I'd have to keep everybody posted on that part. But
and fortunately, there are, because of all of this, there are homeschool options popping up everywhere, co-ops, where, you know, you'll get together with other parents and a lot of teachers that have left the system, the public school system, that are putting together co-ops and other options for parents other than public schools. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I tell parents about the homeschooling stuff, because parents are scared to do that for many reasons. Right. So we're trying to kind of take away the stigma of that and helping parents find ways to homeschool if they're interested. I know we're putting on a virtual homeschool series starting July 10th for that entire week of different topics, you know, for people to come on and just listen, ask questions, you know, different people that'll be on, and just helping parents know that there is a way to do it, where we've got parents who are willing to take in other kids to homeschool to help them do that. If you're a single parent, or, you know, there's no way you could do it, you have multiple children, whatever it is, there's a way to do that, but they are going to have to, you know, be willing to do that. So before they don't have any rights to their child.
Exactly.
So I know when I was a kid, there was a big stigma with homeschool kids. So, and it still happens now. So we're just trying to help take away that stigma a little bit, because we do have the most options of any schooling in the United States. I mean, before all the school choice stuff, but people just have to know that it's there and how to find it. So,
well, that's really the key to changing education is competition, because public education has had such a monopoly on education in general, and until we see a lot more of these co-ops or just Christian schools or other avenues for these kids to actually get educated outside the public school system, that's what's going to finally force the hand for these public schools to change. Is they're losing money basically because these kids are getting a better education somewhere else.
Right. And
it's sure not about our schools today are sure not about academics.
No.
And that's why I send my kids to school. I know that's why you send your kids to school, Dayna's, for academics, not for all the social programming.
Right.
But academics is literally at the bottom of the list when it comes to schools. And I wish, if I was a board member and we had a majority, I would make my school district send out monthly progress reports as to the reading and math proficiencies, where these kids are. I would let parents know in a public fashion as to how the academics is progressing in my school district.
Well, and I want to encourage churches to open your doors during the week for to help these co-ops and these moms that are trying to. Christians should be in the business of rescuing children. So I'm just going to go ahead and call you on that card and say, churches, open your doors, be aware and be involved and be the light in the darkness. And also, I didn't want to forget, we started off talking about the conference. And I know that when you had Ryan Walters speak at your meeting, you had an Oklahoma, quote, I'm going to do this in air quotes, an education group, which, that's laughable in my opinion. But they were threatening to come and ruin your meeting. And of course, no one showed up as we expected. But tell me about your national summit and what all they've had going on that they're going to do and interfere with these moms that want to be involved in their students' education. Those evil moms.
Well, they, I don't know. They don't like. I mean, who knew that parents standing up for their kids could be so bad?
Oh,
we're terrorists. We're terrorists.
I know. Dayna. We're horrible. So, and now recently, since we've been added to the hate map, I guess it is.
From a very wicked group, I will
say. They love throwing that in there. Like, now they're a hate group. You can't let them in. Well, and it's happening across the country now. It's not just something that's happening in Oklahoma, because each state, even as a national, a lot of them have state level groups that operate the same way. Well, they will. No. Sorry. Will still receive letters and saying, if they're going to be there, we can't be there. They're a hate group. This is happening all over. Well, prior to, I think it was just last week, where a chapter in their newsletter quoted Hitler. Okay. Now, if you are in this fight, you understood what they were trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But they didn't give any context behind it. And so, of course, they ran with it. These groups that say they're protecting children or whatever, right? But they also want to keep secrets from parents. These are those same groups.
Which is a very Marxist ideal.
Correct.
FYI.
So, of course, all over the place, they ran with this. This chapter chair did this. This one, she put this out. How dare she? What do they really stand for? You can imagine all the things, right? So and Twitter was just, of course, going absolutely crazy with all of it. So, but leading up to this, there's multiple groups, and they tell you that they are communist groups, Defense of Democracy, all these other groups. National Parents Union was another one. So they have this schedule out for the entire summit up in Philadelphia where they're putting on protests close to the hotel because they've actually blocked off 1 to 2 blocks from the hotel because of President Trump and all these other people that were coming in. So they had the Secret Service and all that was going to do all that. But anyway, so they were setting up protests. They called them dances, but they were protest dances. So all day, every day of the summit, these groups have something planned near the hotel. And one night they're going to a museum for Moms for Liberty is being shuttled to this museum for a dinner. And of course, the groups are going to be right there at the museum. They've actually had calls across the country for people to call this museum to cancel the event since it didn't work for the hotel that the event was in. So now they're, going on with the museum and trying to get them to do the same.
Because they don't want parents to meet together.
Yeah. But I'm at least they're calling themselves what they are, communists. Really. Thank you for not trying to hide it. But one of the flyers, this was funny, where it said to mask up to protect your identity. If you were so proud of the work you're doing, why do you need to put a mask on?
Isn't that interesting?
So I don't know.
Again, secrecy. The secrecy.
Right.
They just the dark they just can't help themselves.
Well, and like we've seen them do with other events where they come in masks, but then they say, well, that person was from, this group or that group, and they're good groups, but they go in masks and then have these signs that act like they're with a different group. So then people are looking down upon these other groups. And so who knows what they're going to do up there. Hopefully it's peaceful. And I know that some of them were talking about having to cancel their day of protesting because of the rain and, since they were outside. So everything happens for a reason, but who knows what the other days will look like. So I think everybody's pretty well versed, and it's not anything that we're not already used to.
Right.
Most of the time they just talk and they don't do anything. But I think depending on where you are, you always have that one that's like going to go rogue and be the one who actually does something,
Yeah.
But the funny thing is these groups, they're leaders of these groups. They don't condone the violence or talk of violence or threats or whatever you want to perceive it as until they get called out about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, which I think it's unfortunate because to me that tells me that they're condoning it. Right.
Right.
Because they know it's happening. It's on their pages.
Of course.
So, but one thing they don't like is when you call them out.
Oh, yeah.
Right. When you use their own words against them. I mean, there's.
Yes. I've had somebody call me a bully because I quoted her.
Yeah.
It's like, I just quoted you.
Yes.
Said it. I didn't.
I know Tulsa County chapter chair, she gets it pretty hard, but I'll sometimes jump in with her on Twitter. We'll do things on Twitter, but people have to see that, they're the ones who are doing these things, right? So why are they not being labeled as a hate group? But we're just trying to stand up for our children.
Right.
But I heard many of them at the public hearing get up and defend why they should keep secrets from parents. And how they assume that we're all horrible people and none of us will accept our children for who they are or what they think they are or whatever it is, right?
Yes, God forbid you raise your children to be all God created them to be. That's a no-no.
Or just, let them, it's like a phase with a lot of them, they grow out of it. But when you've got it being pounded in your head all the time, that, oh, well, you could do this, this, and this. Never mind the lifelong, experience you're going to have with this and how you're going to be on these medications for the rest of your life and have these surgeries and all those things. They don't tell you about that. They glamorize it.
Right.
So
and
I just,
people that have this urge to talk to children about sex, they need to be away from children. And I don't know where we lost that wholesomeness in our society, but well, I do. It was when we all got PCs and they started pummeling people with pornography, and now it's everywhere. But that's
well, there's hospital groups that are going around and providing training to teachers on how to teach about these things, oral sex, anal sex, all these things to children in their classroom.
One of our guests that's going to be on our podcast, Monica Klein, she used to travel with Abby Johnson, who the pro-life person, and she was part of Planned Parenthood when they first started going into schools, and she realized that their goal was not to help anybody, repented, got out, and started whistleblowing. And anyway, she's going to be one of our guests in the month of July. Let me see. The 12th, on the 12th, we'll have her on. And she's going to we're going to dig deep into how this stuff got started and where it is today, because she knows.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it's, for us, I mean, I've learned that I can tell my group all day long about things that are happening nationally, things that are happening even statewide. And they look at me and they're like, that does not happen here. That stuff doesn't happen here.
No, they don't believe it. And it is.
But when I show them something locally in their own school, it's like light bulbs, it's like, oh, it is, or I had no idea, or, and then I'll post information I get back from FOIAs, for a different school district.
Right.
A lot of times. Sometimes it's just so much information that, it's hard to post it all. But, and trying to help people understand, even something as little as if you put your kids in Head Start, Head Start mostly will contract, most school districts, not everyone in the state, but will contract with somebody called Community Action, but they call it Big Five. And they will require parents to do home educational visits. Okay, like we do parent-teacher conferences. We go to the school, we have conferences. No, not only do they want to do 2 of those, parents now have to be ready for educational home educational visits, however they have it worded in their contract, in order to be approved into this program, which is also part of community schools. Right. So they start them as young as they can.
Right.
I've heard of social emotional learning programs in daycares. I mean, for infants. So I promise parents, it's everywhere. You have to know the words to look for. You have to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, then it may be too late by the time you really find out.
Right.
So I have friends whose children have been groomed, and it's horrible watching them go through that, because they were raised in church. They're Christian families. But it sometimes just takes one teacher, to groom them. And in some cases, the teachers follow them throughout the rest of their school career. So if they're in middle school with them, then they find a job at the high school so they can continue on through the high school. So, if parents ever have questions, even if you don't reach out to me, you could reach out to anybody here on this panel as well, because you have to ask questions and know what to look for. So we've all done so many hours of research and FOIAs and all the things to get this information. So it's there. And seeing this and hearing from parents about the things that they're doing in the schools truly breaks my heart. As young as kindergarten, we were talking about Head Start a while ago, but kindergarten, You know, something as simple as come in and pick your color for the day is how they start the day, and how they take that data and they manipulate it into something else that it's really not. So as we get into the new school year, there's probably going to be lots of changes. There's, you know, new things being brought in. Group therapy is something that parents will start seeing at schools if they're not already. So,
yikes. Yeah. I even way back when I pulled my kids out of counseling. They did not go to the counseling. Mine, and one other kid.
The schools email us all the time. Michael, I don't know about you guys up there, but we get emails all the time from our schools about the different things going on and newsletters and all the things. But when it comes time for some of these group therapy sessions or anything else they really don't want you to know about, they send it on paper, and then they rely on the teachers to send it home with the kids. Well, and then and then when you ask the principal, he finds out that some teachers don't even send it home. But then these kids are still getting into these group therapy sessions. So,
we tried to get a bill passed that said parents have to opt in, not opt out.
And there was a bill passed that when it comes to attendance for mental health, now it won't count against their kids' absence. But if you go to the doctor, you know, like a regular doctor's visit, you're out for the day, it counts against you. It's really strange. My kid can go to group therapy all day, not be counted absent, it won't be counted against them. They get excused from work in some cases. But
so how do we get, I mean, how do we get, and this is, you know, like a whole nother hour's worth of talking, so we'll just leave it with this thought. How do we find an education that is at least interested in academics, once again, how to read, math facts, basic education, what I knew as education? How do we get back to that from where we are? I mean, without the entire system collapsing. I mean, that's the only thing I can see, without, you know, the whole system collapse, which what they're doing now is unsustainable, except if you look at China, which they only pretend to educate about 10% of their students, I believe. That was true several years ago, but they, you know.
I'd say two things. First, parents have to stand up and say that's enough. Enough is enough. And two, parents have to think outside the box on how to get there, because if the schools aren't going to get your kid there, you have to figure out a way to do that.
Right. And if the schools aren't going to teach, I mean, honestly, if the schools aren't going to teach your children how to read and how to do math facts in order to be successful in a business, then you're going to have to be homeschooling them anyway. I mean, why are you sending your children away for 8 hours and they still don't know what they need to know to be a successful member of society? You know, how to run a business.
And for parents who think, I can't be their teacher, you're already their teacher.
You're already their teacher.
You have been teaching them since they were born.
Exactly. Since before they were born, because they can hear you at 4 months.
I mean, there's co-ops like we were talking about. I'm sending my daughter for a couple things that I'm not comfortable with teaching. So helping me with that. But there's other ways to do it if you can't put them in a co-op. So you just have to think outside the box.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Parents just need to take a much more, I wouldn't even say active role, because a lot of parents are active, but they're not really being that responsible with the actual steps of accountability in the school.
Yeah.
So because there's a lot of, I mean, like for me with rope, I mean, I take a lot of open records requests, but the most, I'll just tell you, the most active people that want answers are like sports related people that want a coach fired or this or that. You know, if they would just put that same type of determination into just saying, hey, you know, let's have some academics really be important here in this school district, you know, I think things would change. But like you said, Dayna, we're gonna need some bodies in order to do this. It can't just be you or me or Julia or Jenny or
Right.
just a small handful of people. But I think, Julia, also, we're gonna have to see some type of failure in public education, you know, to even much worse level than what it is now, in order
Yikes.
to really activate a lot of these parents that are just so kind of blind to the real issues. Because I know a lot of times, I was telling Julie earlier, you know, when you speak to other parents, Dayna, that's outside your Moms of Liberty group, a lot of people, they don't even understand the concepts of a lot of these things.
And they won't believe you.
Yeah, they won't even, they're like, oh, that's
Because
Dayna, you know,
Because
she's,
all of us have teachers, have people in their lives, you know, that they love, that are in the education system. So they don't question it. I mean,
Very small towns, super small towns seem to be some of the worst because they're also close knit,
yeah,
right.
which is great in, you know, many aspects. But when there's something happening in your school, like you've had multiple people all of a sudden resign because they've been inappropriately touching or speaking to students,
Exactly.
and you don't want to believe that, well, then why did they just all of a sudden resign? Why were they allowed to resign? You know,
And a
so
lot of times they'll resign and go somewhere else.
which we've
well,
seen many
they don't want
times.
to, yeah, they don't want to take the responsibility that it happened in their community with their tax dollars and their kids, or because I saw the same thing with the book reports. I'd go door to door, I'd knock on the door, I'd say, here's a book report that's in our freshman class right now. And people that they didn't want to accept it. They're like, that's not in our school.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, here's the book. Here's my daughter's syllabus. Here's the book right on here. Here's what the book says.
Like a parent would make that up. Like we need
Yeah.
something to do. Why a parent would not make that stuff up?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think we're going to need some systematic failure in order to wake up a larger majority. But like I said, the process has already started. Moms for Liberty, that was never here before, never needed, is here now. It to me, it is a renaissance, and it is happening. You know, it may not happen as fast as we want it to happen, but it is, the ball is rolling.
Right. Yeah, we've got kids graduating every day, you know, every year, and we need a system where they're prepared for not college, for life.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to just continue to educate parents and showing them how they can advocate, even if it's something as, you know, we're talking about opt-out forms. You know, the thing that parents have to remember with opt-out forms is if I'm opting them out of social emotional learning per se, it's not going to be taken out of every class because it's in every class. It's embedded in every subject. But when they're specifically doing lessons on it, like I think they call them character assessments or something in their homeroom or advisory class, whatever they call them, then it removes them from that. So they're not having to be part of that. So some is better than none, I suppose. But you also have to stay on top of them and make sure that they're doing that. The other thing is, you know, for vaccines, you know, some parents are like, no more. There are forms in order to opt your child of those, no matter what your school tells you. And the schools are supposed to be providing that information. So to where
by law now, specifically with 658 passing 2 years ago, schools now by law have to tell parents that there is an opt-out, which they don't.
But they're not. Yeah. And so, yeah, some people are just so surprised to learn of all these forms of ways that they can actually get their child out of things. You know, I have an opt-out form where the nurse can't speak to my child without my permission. They can't visit the counselor, you know, like all these things that they cannot do unless they speak to me first. And
most parents, it would never occur to them that they can even do that.
Yeah.
So we'll be providing more information on that as far as Moms for Liberty is concerned as we get closer to school and showing them those forms and where they can get those forms. And, you know, they're real easy to fill out, so it doesn't take much time. You just email them, unless you just want to actually drop it off. But then you have record if you email it saying, you know, this was sent on this day, you know, all those things. But there are ways to get around some of these things if you cannot remove your child from public school.
Okay.
So, you know, because some just can't. Some can,
Right.
some can't. But
Correct.
so we want to try to help all of them as much as possible with those forms, and, you know, knowing what questions to ask. We have a list of questions that we provide parents of things they can ask their principals about the things that are happening in their school, and you can see how they react to them.
Right.
So,
All right. Well, we're 20 minutes over, which is about typical. So,
right.
Well, Dayna, tell everybody again how to get in contact with you, and just anything else you want to say about Moms for Liberty, Canadian County.
So they can find our Moms for Liberty chapter page on Facebook, Moms for Liberty Canadian County, if they'd like to join. It is a private group, so there are questions that one has to answer before they can join. You can always message me on Facebook if you have questions. Again, my email is the number 4, Liberty, Canadian County @gmail.com if you have questions. Or you can also go to the momsforliberty.org website.
All right, perfect.
great.
Well, Dayna, thank you so much. I can't. I mean, I have so much respect and admiration for moms and dads, but people just like you that are taking action and, you know, forcing some accountability. So I can't thank you enough. My hat's off to you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me.
We shall talk soon, Michael. It's up to you to get us out of here.
All right. I will.
Bye.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
Bye-bye.
Bye.